Well, hello. We're here at the Toronto International Film Festival, LA Times studio. I'm Jen Yamato, film reporter, here with.
I'm Justin Chang, film critic.
And we're gonna kind of sort of go over
Yeah.
how are we feeling at this point in the festival? Was it a good year? Did you feel alive because of the movies you saw? Or at this point, like what, 5 days in, do you feel like you'd rather crawl into a hole?
Yeah, I think
and hibernate?
a certain exhaustion sets in around this time every festival, and yet, there's still a few days to go, and I'm looking forward to seeing things. I always think it's a good year in Toronto. I can't really remember a bad year, just because this festival is so huge.
Yes.
You're seeing a lot of new world premieres, but you're also seeing some of the best films from earlier festivals like Sundance and Cannes, and some films arriving here straight from Venice and Telluride. So it's kind of this inexhaustible bounty. Not every movie's a winner, maybe, but quite a few of them are.
I enjoy this festival more than I think most of them because, like you're saying, it's so big. There's always something to discover. There's always something to watch, whether or not you've sort of heard about it from previous festivals or not. And then there are always the big splashy movies that you hope are good. In this case, for me, it was A Star is Born, which I honestly was like very skeptical about going in because I love the Judy Garland version of
So
Star
great.
is Born. Not so much the Barbara Streisand version. I'm so sorry, Barbara. But I found it so moving and the music is so good. So it was one of my favorites.
I think that's a movie that is playing just exceptionally well to just about everyone. It may not be everyone's favorite, but it's the kind of movie that we feel starved for sometimes from Hollywood. I mean, a movie like that should be kind of our meat and potatoes. And good for Bradley Cooper, who directed the film. It's his
Yeah.
directorial debut.
And he's great in it, too.
He's so good in the movie. Lady Gaga is terrific. I think it's that story, every era kind of gets the Star is Born it deserves, and this is a very good one for this era.
Are you one of Lady Gaga's little monsters, Justin?
I don't really know what that means.
Are you a fan? Do you sing her songs in the shower?
Bad Romance sometimes, yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit, yeah. Who doesn't though? Who doesn't do the? I'm not going to do it. I really was taken with quite a few films, but I'll start with Widows, which I know you've seen as well. The new film from Steve McQueen. This is a heist thriller starring Viola Davis, but it's an ensemble picture, also with Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Debicki, Daniel Kaluuya. It's a fantastic cast. Viola Davis, as she so often is in ensemble movies, being first among equals, I would say. And what's so thrilling about this movie is that, what do you do after you've made 12 Years a Slave and won the Oscar for Best Picture? Well, you kind of downshift, I guess, and you make a fun genre picture, but that is what he's done, and yet it's not what he's done, because he's really amped up, if anything, sort of the political urgency. There's so much he has to say about race, about class, about gender, perhaps most of all, and the way he coils that commentary into the mechanics of this heist film is just fantastically gripping, and the acting is just superb across the board. So that was one of the best things I've seen here for sure.
Another of my favorites was Destroyer, which premiered first at Telluride, and I think could potentially be a little divisive, depending on how you take your extremely dark, bleak stories starring A-list actresses. I think a lot of people will be really surprised by Nicole Kidman in this movie. It's directed by Karyn Kusama, who is amazing, and what I loved about it is it's the kind of story we see Nicole Kidman like you've never seen her before, totally unrecognizable, playing this haunted LAPD detective who is forced to examine a mysterious event from her past that we don't know much about, but it's really cool LA set noir. If you love LA, it's the kind of LA you never get to see in movies.
Speaking of divisive, I am going to bring up one of my favorites. It actually might be my favorite movie of the festival so far. The movie is High Life, Claire Denis' new film, her first English language film starring Robert Pattinson in outer space. And the premise of it is actually kind of a bit like a Predator movie.
Totally is.
Insofar as it's a bunch of misfits in outer space, this crew of death row inmates who have been sort of flung into, beyond the solar system as part of their punishment, and also to serve the cause of science. But that is just the beginning of this astro-erotic space odyssey that is Claire Denis is one of my very favorite filmmakers, and she just pushes the limits of the medium, of imagery, of structure in ways that very few filmmakers are doing. And she continues to do that, even though this is an English language movie starring Robert Pattinson, heartthrob, wonderful actor Robert Pattinson, and Juliette Binoche, as well as a sort of space doctor with a very sinister reproductive agenda. There were streams of walkouts from the screening, and I don't care. This movie was not made for them. It's really great.
Well, we don't have that much time to go over all of what has happened, even in the past few days here at Toronto, because there's been so much. Halloween,
Yes.
the new Halloween premiered at midnight, and it was like a gift to Halloween fans, with Jamie Lee Curtis in attendance. We had movies like Burning, which is one of your festival favorites.
Absolutely, love that from Cannes. It's South Korea's Oscar submission, and if it doesn't get nominated, it will be a travesty. I'll say that now. I usually shouldn't forecast Oscars at this stage, but it really, really deserves it. And I do want to really quickly throw in a word for, I think, one of the critical and audience hits here, which is If Beale Street Could Talk, Barry Jenkins' new film, and kind of like Widows, perhaps, following a Best Picture winner. Barry Jenkins directed Moonlight, and how do you follow up that movie? This one is both kind of a very different movie from Moonlight, and yet recognizably a companion piece. It's adapted from a 1974 novel by James Baldwin. Another wonderful ensemble cast, with, I would say, Regina King being first among equals in that cast. It's a love story, 1970s Harlem, very politically engaged filmmaking as well. I love this, I don't know if it's always been there and we're just noticing it more now, but I do feel like there is this political undercurrent in films and engaging with not just the evergreen issue of representation, but really, this is a movie that interweaves a love story with issues of police brutality and mass incarceration of African American men. It's just, and the filmmaking is just exquisite and gorgeous beyond belief. This movie opens fairly soon in theaters later this fall, so I really hope people will get a chance to see it.
And kind of a special movie to come to Toronto in a year when TIFF is leading the festival scene in terms of putting themselves out there on the front lines of the inclusion, media diversity battle. And this year I saw like so many more critics of color here and female journalists who had never been here before, who were able to come this year and cover, and it was a beautiful thing, and that's something that I want to shout out the festival.
Absolutely, and you do notice that. It's weird how, and then you realize why you didn't notice it before when there was kind of this deficiency, and so good for Toronto.
And then when movies like Beale Street premiere, the conversation is richer.
It's richer, yeah. Absolutely. So, and we will continue to have that conversation and cover this festival, and you can read more of our coverage at latimes.com/TIFF.